Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Munib with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. Israel has continued to bombard Gaza Strip with airstrikes and artillery shells, ignoring international calls for calm. Medics say at least 119 Palestinians, including 31 children, have been killed and over 800 wounded so far. The Israeli military has also stepped up the deployment of troops and tanks near the besieged Palestinian enclave. Meanwhile, the United States blocked today's open meeting of the UN Security Council, which will now be held on Sunday. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said waiting for a few days would be effective diplomatically. In Afghanistan, at least 12 worshippers have been killed and 15 more wounded in an explosion at a mosque in Kabul during Friday prayers. The latest violence comes on the second day of a three-day Eid ceasefire agreed between the Taliban and Afghan forces. The Taliban have condemned the attack. Azerbaijan has dismissed Armenia's accusations that its forces violated Armenian territory on its southeastern border areas of Vardanis and Sisian. In a statement, the Azeri Foreign Ministry said it was enforcing its own border and is committed to easing tensions in the region. Meanwhile, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has stressed the need for strict observance of a ceasefire agreement between the two countries. India's coronavirus infections tally has surpassed 24 million, with more than 343,000 cases and 4,000 deaths overnight. In Pakistan, over 2,500 people tested positive and 48 died overnight, taking the death toll to 19,384. Globally, the virus has claimed over 3.3 million lives and infected more than 160.8 million people. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has vowed to give a firm response to Ukraine after it placed a pro-Russian politician under house arrest. Viktor Medvedchuk is a strong ally of Putin, faces. These were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back now. Israel has continued to bombard Gaza Strip with airstrikes and artillery shells, ignoring international calls for calm. Medics say at least 119 Palestinians, including 31 children, have been killed and over 800 wounded so far.
Despite calls from the international community for an end to the deadly offensive against Palestinians, Israeli forces defied all norms of international law and humanity and continued assaults on the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military has stepped up the deployment of troops and tanks near the besieged Palestinian enclave. 2 infantry and 1 armored unit have been positioned near the Gaza border, while Tel Aviv has also called 7,000 army reservists. However, U.S. President Joe Biden said he is pressing for a halt to violence in Gaza and Jerusalem. Meanwhile, addressing the U.S. Congress, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib called the Israeli administration an apartheid government. Tlaib, daughter of Palestinian immigrants, broke into tears during her moving speech over Israel's oppression and occupation.
We must condition aid to Israel on compliance with international human rights and end the apartheid. We must, with no hesitation, demand that our country recognize the unconditional support of Israel has enabled the erasure of Palestinian life and the denial of the rights of millions of refugees.
Meanwhile, the U.S. blocked today's public virtual meeting of the UN Security Council to address the Gaza conflict. Diplomats say the council will meet on Sunday instead, after U.S. envoy argued waiting for a few days would allow for diplomacy to have some effect. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation will also hold an emergency meeting on Sunday to discuss the deadly unrest. As violence escalated in Gaza, tension has also spread to mixed communities of Jews and Arabs in Israel, a new front in the long conflict. Jewish groups attacked people and damaged shops, hotels, and cars overnight. Israeli occupying forces, meanwhile, have arrested over 400 Palestinians over the past 24 hours. The protests in different parts of the world are continuing against Israeli aggression and in solidarity with Gazans.
Esta acción no es única.
This protest is not unique. In hundreds of places across the world, there are thousands and thousands taking up the cause of a people under assault, of a people that the press say is a war of equals. That does not exist. One of the most powerful armies in the world, the Israeli army, are massacring Palestinians, and the Palestinians have only one weapon, which is their dignity.
Amid the violence, international airlines, including KLM, British Airways, and Virgin Atlantic, have suspended services to Israel.
Well, now at least 12 worshippers have been killed and 15 more wounded in an explosion at a mosque in Kabul during Friday prayers. The latest violence comes on the second day of a three-day Eid ceasefire agreed between the Taliban and the Afghan forces. 11 people were killed and 13 others wounded in separate roadside bombings on the first day of the temporary truce. The Taliban have condemned the mosque attack. Violence has increased in Afghanistan even as the US has begun an operation to withdraw all its remaining troops over the next 4 months. Afghan officials have confirmed a complete withdrawal of US troops from a key base in Kandahar province as well. Now, Baku has dismissed Yerevan's accusations that Azeri forces violated Armenian territory on its southeastern border areas. In a statement, Azeri Foreign Ministry said Armenia's allegations are provocative. The ministry said it is enforcing its own border and is committed to easing tensions in the region. It said Azeri officials have been in talks with Armenian border guards to normalize the situation. The ministry noted it is unacceptable that the Armenian officials are using this issue for political purposes before their election. Earlier, Armenia's defense ministry accused Azerbaijan of moving forces 3 kilometers into its territory. It said the Azeri forces try to ensure positional advance in the border areas of Vardenis and Sisyan. Meanwhile, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has stressed the need for strict observance of a ceasefire agreement between the two countries. Now, Myanmar's military government has declared martial law in western Chin state, Mindat region after alleged attacks by a militia. State media said about 100 people attacked a police station using homemade guns, while about 50 targeted the state bank. It said that security forces had repelled the attack without suffering any casualties. A spokesperson for a newly formed militia, the Chinland Defense Force, said it was behind the latest fighting. He said one of the fighters from the force was killed while clashes are continuing, with the army bringing in reinforcements. Meanwhile, pro-democracy activists have continued their protests in many cities despite violent crackdown. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has again condemned the Myanmar military's attacks on protesters. Now, India's coronavirus infections tally has surpassed 24 million, with more than 343,000 cases and 4,000 deaths overnight. While globally the virus has claimed over 3.3 million lives and infected more than 160.8 million people. Details in this report.
The variant first detected in India is alarmingly spreading across the world. UK cases of Indian variant have more than doubled in the past week, as Prime Minister Boris Johnson says his government won't rule out anything to curb the spread. The World Health Organization experts say this variant has been found in 8 countries of the Americas, including Canada and the US. With no signs of coronavirus numbers decreasing in India, Mumbai crematoriums are overburdened by a spike in demand. Workers say about 90% of the bodies coming in for funerals nowadays are packed in body bags. Meanwhile, several states in India have reported a vaccine shortage, with some centers standing completely empty.
At the last moment, there's another information which says it is stopped indefinitely. So this is definitely a little alarming situation, or a panic situation, and probably a little more better logistic or better plan should have been done to cover this kind of a population.
As in Brazil, a Senate commission investigates whether President Jair Bolsonaro's government mishandled the pandemic. Pfizer's chief executive told lawmakers the company got no response from Brazil's health ministry to its repeated offers to supply vaccine last year. Meanwhile, over in the US, CDC issued new guidance saying fully vaccinated people do not need to wear masks outdoor and can avoid wearing them indoors in most places. US President Joe Biden celebrated the announcement, but cautiously.
We still have too many unvaccinated people. We have to get to 70% of adults started on vaccinations by July the 4th. And we have to take this pandemic, tackle it, not just here, but overseas as well, to truly be safe in the long run.
Mainland China has reported 7 new COVID-19 cases, including its first local transmissions in more than 3 weeks. Japan says it will declare a state of emergency in 3 more prefectures in a surprise move reflecting growing concerns about the virus spread.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 48 more people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the nationwide death toll has reached 19,384. The ministry registered just above 2,500 infections overnight. It said the caseload has crossed 873,000, out of which more than 780,000 people have recovered. The number of active infections in the country is over 73,000. The ministry said 4,330 patients are in critical condition. Now, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has vowed to give a firm response to Ukraine after it placed a pro-Russian politician under house arrest. Viktor Medvedevchuk, who is a strong ally of Putin, faces treason charges. Tensions soared last month when Russia amassed troops near the border with Ukraine amid fighting between rebels and Ukrainian troops in the Donbass region. The build-up of troops raised fears of triggering a full-scale war, prompting international calls for de-escalation. Days later, Russia ordered troops to return to permanent bases. Now, Nepal's president has reinstated ousted Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli after opposition parties failed to garner a majority against him. The president had called on opposing parties to propose a new candidate by Thursday evening. However, they failed to forge a majority coalition. The Prime Minister lost a no-confidence vote on Monday following months of a feud with his coalition partners. Oli has faced fierce criticism over his handling of the pandemic as well as corruption allegations. More news coming up in this news bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, in the US state of Rhode Island, at least 9 people have been wounded after gunfire from a vehicle targeted a home in the Providence. Police say 3 of those wounded are in critical condition. Providence Police Chief Hugh Clements said several dozens of shots were fired from as many as 5 guns. Talking to reporters, Clements said police are familiar with 2 groups involved in the shooting. However, no arrests have been made so far as the investigation is in its early stages. Now, an Italian judge has ruled that former Interior Minister Matteo Salvini must not stand trial over allegations of kidnapping migrants. Salvini was accused of kidnapping by refusing migrants from disembarking a ship. The case centered on an incident in 2019 when Salvini blocked around 100 people aboard a Coast Guard ship for 6 days. The case resembles a separate investigation into Palermo over migrants who were kept aboard another boat a month later. But in a contrasting decision, a judge in Palermo last month ordered that Salvini should stand trial over the allegations. The trial in Palermo will begin on 15th of September. Ireland's health service has temporarily shut down its IT system after being attacked by what it termed a significant ransomware attack. The health service executive says the step is a precaution to protect as much information as possible. State media says a maternity hospital in Dublin cancelled all appointments after the attack. Talking to state media, the HSE chief executive Paul RHODE termed the attack very sophisticated. RHODE said the attack is impacting all national and local systems involved in the core health services. He added it is largely affecting information stored on central servers and not hospital equipment. The attack did not affect the country's COVID-19 vaccination program as it has a separate system. Now, South Korea says it is considering ways to hold bilateral consultations with Japan on its Fukushima water release plans. Korean Foreign Ministry termed bilateral consultations necessary apart from IAEA-led verification process. The ministry said it plans to request Japan to hold joint consultations of experts from both countries on the issue. They urged Tokyo to ensure participation of South Korean experts in the IAEA monitoring. Seoul has expressed concerns over Tokyo's plans to release over 1.2 million tons of radioactive water into the Indian Ocean. Moving on now, the UK says it wants to broker a global agreement to stop the cross-border financing of coal projects in an upcoming summit. Britain is set to host the UN Virtual Climate Change Conference in November. Summit's in charge, Alok Sharma, said significant action is needed to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. In an interview, Sharma said London is working with governments and international organizations to achieve this target. Sharma said he will urge nations to abandon coal power generation. The UK currently generates 2% of its electricity from coal, down from 40% in 2020. It plans to completely phase out coal as a power source by 2024. US President Joe Biden says the Colonial Pipeline is close to reaching full operational capacity as of now. Biden added that he expects to see fuel normalcy starting this weekend. Biden said his administration has taken steps such as sending fuel to gas stations that will help fill the tanks of 5 million vehicles. He also urged customers not to get more gas than they need and warned fuel stations against price gouging. Biden also said he does not believe Moscow was behind the attack, but that those who were involved in the attack were based in Russia. Earlier this week, Colonial Pipeline began to slowly restart the nation's largest fuel pipeline network after a ransomware attack shut the line. Former Maldives President Mohamed Nasheed has been flown to Germany for further medical treatment after last week's assassination attempt. Nasheed has been in intensive care after a bomb attack outside his home in the capital May. The Speakers of Parliament underwent 16 hours of surgery to remove shrapnel from his lungs, abdomen and liver. Police have arrested 3 men in connection with the attack and are searching for others involved in the attack. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. Now, at least 18 elephants have been killed after a thunderstorm struck India's northeastern Assam state. Locals found the carcasses of the elephants in a forest in Nagaon district of the state. Assam Forest Minister Parimal Suklabaidya said the carcasses were sent from post-mortem and an investigation is underway. India has over 50% of Asiatic elephants, but their population has declined in recent years due to habitat fragmentation and erratic enforcement of forest laws. Now, European markets have edged up following the trend in the Asia-Pacific led by overnight gains on Wall Street. Federal Reserve officials calmed investors' jitters of accelerating the US inflation. Frankfurt's DAX, London's FTSE and the CAC in Paris have all added more than 0.5%. Italy's FTSE MIB and the Pan-European Stock 600 have also ascended nearly 0.5%. Earlier, all major Asian shares traded significantly higher. And with that, we come to the end of this news bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.